Um, I have to redo my critical things people should know part one video because the first one was just ultimately too long. Um, I want to tighten it up, and I forgot to cover uh, some really important things. I just completely forgot at the end because it went on for so long. So, anybody happens to catch this, uh, this is not a commercially geared video. Uh, Most of this is going to be me talking, setting up some custom lobbies, but there is really important information in it. So it's up to whoever catches this if they want to watch it or not. Um, Basically, the motivation for this was Exclusive Ace video, and Exclusive Ace, if you aren't familiar who he is one of the biggest Call of Duty YouTubers in the world. Does a lot of great videos. But he did a video that was called 10 Tips for Beginners. And ultimately, I basically felt like this. I didn't see that there was realistically much to get out of it. And it's no offense to him. And I don't see that for many YouTube videos that there's really much to get out of it. I think that there are tutors who will help people playing Call of Duty. I personally have never been involved with any of that. Maybe it really helps. And some of it seems to be that people are holding out on things like how the spawns work and spawn maps and stuff like that. So whatever. Even if you go and purchase one of the official guides for years now, since back through like Black Ops 2 and Ghosts, they don't really help that much. It's like a 100-page book that really doesn't help. So my motivation for this video was what really matters. Now, some of these things are not necessarily like easy to put into a quick 10 tips for beginners type video, but they are critically important and are there for beginners. But the whole thing, and I'm trying to just be much more concise here in the first video. I have a second part that's on YouTube that is the addendum, basically to try to enhance the original one. That is fine, and there's good information in that too. It's a little bit long, but it's much more concise and to the point. So getting back to the critical information here, this is redoing part one, is that Call of Duty and many other military-based shooters over holiday season and with people picking them up and stuff, it is not a game that is intended for children. It has a specific rating on it that is 17 plus from the ESRB. Now, that has next to nothing to do with the reality of it. But my first point for anybody new to this game, or for anybody playing it at all, is that you need to take in mind who is playing this and why. What is the playing group? And the main reason for that is because, one, if you're new and you don't know any of the dynamics of the game, how is that going to work out? If you are a person who knows it, who are you being put into lobbies with? And it can just turn into a total mess. So for anybody who's new to this game, the first thing you're going to have is you're going to have, one, lots of toxicity, lots of trash talking, lots of race trash talk from all directions. It's a violent game, you know, and a large number of people are going to be kids. The second part to that is that you have this question of whether any of these games are to be taken seriously. And the real issue here is that you have the entire gamut put into the same space. You have a 5-year-old children on a daily basis, and you won't know it because they may not be speaking. Sometimes they'll be on a microphone. And you have people who are making millions of dollars a year, sometimes ending up in the same lobbies. And this is a whole issue with the skill-based matchmaking and stuff, and whether or not there's a ranked list and all these other things. And there are just issues all the way around with all of it. But to that end, for anyone playing, and I'm going to move specifically to Call of Duty, and this is Cold War, there are kind of sort of places for both of those people. And realistically speaking, your serious people are going to be more in search and destroy. They're also often going to be playing hardcore more, even though hardcore really isn't any more difficult. There are a lot of issues surrounding hardcore. You're going to find more serious people on the PC systems and on the Battle Royale modes, normally. Whereas your standard stuff, your team deathmatch, domination, the common ones, even though they can have a total skill to them, you're going to find more just everybody of all mixes. But the main issue with that is that being prepared for it and knowing when you go in that people do play it seriously and people do play it like it's junk, and they're all in the same lobbies. And that moves on to the second point, which is that with all of this like competitive trash talk and animosity and everything that goes on, the this is really part two. This is critical point two, is that you really can't take it seriously. I mean, you can try, but until somebody is playing this game on a fiber optic local area network with immediate response time, and ideally on a very high-powered PC platform, either with a custom controller or with a correctly set mouse and keyboard, and the mouse and keyboard is going to top everything. There are the hardware limitations and the network limitations that these games, and it's not just Call of Duty, put on a player are game changing, game breaking. And some people don't know it, but plenty of people do notice it, especially a lot of new people. They notice that something seems odd. It seems like they're getting killed very quickly. It seems like it changes depending on time of day or how busy things are and stuff like that. And without getting too much into it, because I'm trying to keep it concise, once upon a time, in the early days of this stuff, it was very easy to tell where the networking was affecting things, because you had clear, simple systems. And when someone was on a delay, when there was a lot of delay between people over the internet, you could see it. It was just very obvious. And now everything is made to mask and blend that to the point that some people don't even know that it's happening, and it varies depending on the conditions. And it's also not a thing. And again, it gets very complicated. I'm trying to be quick here, but it's not an issue of super low ping versus super high ping, because there are many times when a super low ping is just as bad as a super high ping, and people are oblivious to this. In general, I have a degree in digital computers and media. I worked for years in IT. I have multiple lifetime certifications. I worked as a network administrator. I worked in field technical support. So I do have a background in these general sorts of things. So basically, the second point of this was that amidst all of the community and stuff, you need to know that when people are acting like it's serious in life and death, or not at all, it is very difficult to take it seriously outside of a local area high-end PC network. And the general components of that are that you have, for a normal person, the World Wide Web environment of the internet, and you're going to have the primarily is the server cycling on the company's end and your proximity to their servers compared to the other players in the lobby and who you're engaging in direct battles with. And adjunct to that, you have your display, because even if your system is able to process stuff, if your display doesn't get it to you at a rapid rate, it doesn't matter. You have your input. Most of the inputs for people, normal basis, are fine. By input, that means your controller or your mouse, at least on delay and stuff. The pros take it seriously with adapters and things, but whatever. for a normal person, your primary factors here are going to be your internet service, Activision servers, or whichever game it is, how high of a frequency those servers are working on, your display frequency, and then your basic system here. And the what I'm going to get into, I'm going to skip over it mostly for now. But what I'm going to get into when I go into the custom lobby is, what does any of that amount to? Why does it matter? Why does a display rate, a console or PC frame rate, a ping to the server, or a server cycle matter? What does it really do? Is it a big deal? Because it is a big deal. And what the ended up taking forever, the reason I'm redoing this video, is because honestly, it is literally under the poles of those conditions, the difference between a 0.3 KD and a 3 KD. People say, "Oh, that's absurd. It doesn't." Yes, under the certain, I'll say this. I have 2 Plants vs. Zombies shooter games, where on the new one, I can get a literal round-trip 5 millisecond ping to EA servers. I can run completely flawless 30 KD rounds in there. When I put on the previous game that has next to nobody playing it, and where I often have to connect to a 150 ping, I literally can barely get a shot off. I cannot hit a target. It is that dependent on the networking. I am literally a 0.2 KD in attempting to play on Plants vs. Zombies 1. And all of these games do that. It has been tested over and over that these networking conditions produce that. So that's why you have special gaming routers and things. But so basically the point here was, as a new person, why are you playing? What's the point? Where are you coming from? There's this entire mixed environment. There's lots of trash talking and stuff. How can you take it serious? Your system and stuff has everything to do with it. And basically, skipping over the details of that, I get to the third point, which was that when you're going to actually, because it's primarily a shooting game, it's all about accuracy and aim. And the first thing is that even if you buy a $300 controller, you are still at a disadvantage to a mouse and keyboard. A mouse allows specific pinpoint accuracy. When it is set correctly, you simply scroll over the screen, point, and click. And when you have recoil on a gun, you can simply, at the point of point and clicking, knowing the angle of the recoil, pull down on the mouse. The downside of that is that you have to use these keypads, which are equivalent to needing a typing skill, basically. So many people in the home console market can't even type and are more comfortable. And this isn't to, I find controller to be much more comfortable. The keys are very awkward to me. But they use controller. Well, what everyone needs to know is that these controllers across the board, across Sony and Xbox, anything used on a PC, all the different brands, have basically a horrible stick technology. And that results in a across-the-board thing called a dead zone on the controllers, or a dead zone nullification. What it means is that the central axis of the stick, exactly where you're trying to aim onto the bullseye, is very difficult to get at. As soon as you go to do it, depending on the manufacturer, the area where it loses motion, picks up on motion, how fast it goes, are all set by these dead zones. And the reason is that if you turn off the dead zone, the sticks start drifting randomly. It's the actual technology in the sticks. The games have varying degrees of sensitivity, and if you try and turn down that central dead area, it starts to move incorrectly. And even then, each stick and their tensions and things determines how hard it is to actually get on the point with it. None of that happens with a mouse. And if you don't understand any of that, what you need to do is pull up any game with a control using a controller that has one of these menus where you can move a cursor over like the whole map or the menu, and watch how hard it is with your stick tensions to actually get the point on point by default, to an exact point. You can watch people do it all the time. It goes to the left, to the right, to the whatever. Well, that's why you have all these settings in the game. And they've finally added stuff as they've moved more over to a PC environment for these dead zone areas, and it's called on this the input threshold. But that is that's one of the primary reasons for this thing called aim assist in a non-PC, non-mouse and keyboard environment with controllers. And you can try it yourself. You can attempt to go and shoot stuff with aim assist turned off and watch how difficult it is. So you're at a complete disadvantage on the input. That is, following up on all of the network stuff from point 2. So now in point 3, which has to do with this input issue. Well, here is the thing. This is my critical thing that I hope someone will get something out of. Call of Duty has a get in here to Call of Duty has an aiming down sights dynamic, same way as Battlefield mini shooter games. CS:GO is the biggest game that does not have, as a general rule, that aim down sight. The sniper rifles do, maybe some other things, but the core game, you don't have that. It's been a while since I played Valorant. I only played it a few times. I think it's similar. I don't think ADS is required. I'm just setting up one of the quickest submachine guns here. And you have this whole dynamic where as you're moving around, your cursor box there, the actual frame, the invisible frame around the cross there, gets larger or smaller depending on what you're doing. And of course, if you aim, this is to focus it. Well, these are, and again, I'm trying to be concise here, but these are pretty much artificial dynamics. You'll have plenty of times where you're just dead on with the Call of Duty system on hipfire, but it refuses to get more than a single bullet on the person. It's just spraying all around them by the hipfire rules here. Maybe it's some kind of random number generator or whatever. Whereas if you aim, it's right there where you want it. Well, the issue with this is that your aiming in the game is really ultimately needing to be more this state than this state. The thing, and I say that based on a settings level with all of these issues with the sensitivities and zones and controller brands and stuff. And so here is my advice. This is point 3, is set up a custom game with bots or with zombies, and do hipfire only with a submachine gun. Use one that has a good hit. They're all pretty similar, but this is a great one. And you can set up your attachments, put your lasers and stuff on it so that it has the most concise hipfire possible. And then go around the map and learn to play just by hipfire, and learn which sensitivities of movement feel the best for getting on point with the central point here. Learn to close your gaps. Learn to be tactical. Learn to get in immediate death range against people using just hipfire. Then you can tackle all the other stuff that is piled on top of that with all the different ADS times and ranges and everything else with the guns. But once you have your sensitivity set to be able to target people comfortably using your input with just this, and to actually get something done tactically and in these modes, learning to play the modes. Now, I'm not saying it's been like hours, spend as much time as you feel like, but get the gist of doing the settings. You can do that in one game. You can go in and start adjusting the settings until it feels like it's moving correctly. As a side note to that, the guns are supposed to have recoil. 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, holding it down. If you see someone playing this game and it's just doing absolutely nothing, like it's just sitting there right on target, they are 99.9% cheating. I don't want to be rude, but the general cover has always been, well, a skilled shooter is able to control the stick. Go try it for yourself. Go notice how difficult it is, even standing stationary, to feel the tension, learn the gun, and get the stick on point. Now imagine doing that when you're sliding, jumping, under fire from 5 directions, have no idea where anybody's coming from, try and get on point. With a mouse, it is possible, but with a controller like this, if you see somebody whose gun is going absolutely nowhere in the kill cam, they are more than likely cheating. And this is, again, the addendum to this thing, is that there have been for years and years and years, virtually, that they don't know, to my knowledge, there's no good way to stop it. They're controller input modification devices, or just programs or scripts that say, and I'll tell you exactly, because I own one of them right now. It's a Chronos Max adapter. They have automated inputs that when you go to fire, it intercepts the controller and immediately starts sending the signals to cancel the recoil out by moving it the opposite directions. And so it's been a while since I set it up. I think they're actually much more effective now. There are videos on the internet where people have demonstrated essentially just beaming people with no recoil. And when I tried it, it worked. I have personally never once used that in a real environment. I tried it like 2 times with some scripts when I first got the Chronos Max. I got the Chronos Max because it allowed me to change. I can use my Xbox Elite on a PlayStation. I can use my PlayStation controller on an Xbox One. I can swap controllers of every brand and company, joysticks. I can hook up the PC with anything. I can plug a joystick and keyboard into any system. It basically just converts it from one style to the other. And that's what I needed to do. I did at one point, playing Call of Duty World War II, use a hip shot dot. And that is kind of important, and I can't say that it really necessarily counts as cheating. It's got, I mean, I guess it is. It uses it. It's like having a free attachment on the gun. It's a physical colored light that you put on your screen exactly where the center of the cross is, that lets you always have an illuminated dot there, so that when you're moving around, it's hard to keep track of where the middle is. It's glowing, and part of your brain recognizes that, and it makes it very easy to get it onto point onto an enemy. It's literally glowing like a laser sight on them. So it gives you a free invisible laser sight. I used it for a little while on World War II, and eventually it fell off the screen so many times I just didn't feel like it was one. It was kind of cheating, and but it was good training. I just stopped using it. But that was years ago. So anyway, the third point there was losing track of my points here. Okay, 1 was the environment. 2 was the system limitations. 3 is the input. 4 is the hip fire type stuff. And this is where there are 2 different things that I want to cover on this that are both time consuming. and I think that I'll do the delay comp end of it first. Um, this is so important for anyone new to any first-person shooter game, because I do not know of any game on the market that does not follow what I'm about to explain. It is called Shooter's Advantage, and it is a miserable experience if you don't know what it is, because it is rage-inducing, because it seems like there's something wrong. Shooter's Advantage, and there are textbooks, there are universities with gaming development classes, Valve, Blizzard Software. The guys who have the clearest explanation of it are the Overwatch Blizzard guys, in my opinion. Shooter's Advantage is basically, this is the basis of Shooter's Advantage. What I see on my system is what I have. When you're playing over the internet, there is an innate delay between the people. So when I am running from here to here, that has to update to a server or through listening servers or through peer-to-peer just to the other person, And there's going to be a delay in time. So that what they have on their screen is basically always going to be in the past. And the question is, how much in the past is it? This is the reason for what I was saying earlier about playing on a local area network. Because at that point, it's minimized down to next to nothing. It's basically nearly light speed. Over the internet, it's not. And so when I'm here and I move here, and they still have me stored on their system without an update at this position, what happens when someone starts shooting? Shooter's Advantage is in large part a commercial concept that says that if you are shooting at someone that you clearly see on your system and the shots do not register, if they do not hit, if there's no damage, that is a frustrating, miserable experience that nobody wants to play. There is, when the person sees me stored at this position, I could have moved here, here, here. I could have backed up. I could have gone prone. I could have jumped. And in between the updates, they will have no idea which of those things I was doing. They cannot, for most people, their tendency would be to just shoot whichever direction I seem to be moving. But they don't know. So what would the game do? And a blanket decision was made that the person shooting gets the shot regardless of where the person went. And that basically robs you. You're constantly going to be robbed in an online environment. Beyond that, it sets up weird dynamics where I guess I better show this in more detail in a second. But it sets up weird dynamics when both people see each other and are moving side to side or engaged in a gunfight because they aren't at the position that the other person is seeing. And where the other video ended up taking forever is that there's a big difference between the old system of hit scan in Call of Duty and the new system of projectile ballistics. I love the projectile ballistics, but I do not know of anyone who knows how they are making a decision on the game development end of this Shooter's Advantage, which is still there, under these complex projectile environments, because it's like 10 times the complication. One thing that I did say in that I repeat is that the standard hit scan model, a lot of people just take as some simple rule, and it's not, because it can be modified. What hit scan what most people think hit scan means is that traditionally in Call of Duty, when you saw a target and shot, the bullet basically hit instantaneously. It did not matter how far away you were on the map, whatever was going on, it just hit. Now that can be changed. It can be programmed to have a certain amount of delay, but it did not have the complex ballistics that, say, Battlefield 4 did, where the bullets had an arcing path due to gravity. They can be programmed to have external forces like wind. They have different strengths based on the gun of how far they can go and how much the velocity drops as it curves back to the ground. And basically, the projectile stuff involves everything slowing down and hitting the ground. The main thing behind that is that with a real life gun, if you go to a 100-yard football field, which is a great measure, and that's about just over 300 feet. A 100-yard football field is roughly 100 meters. They're very close to the same measurement.
Marking waypoint.
And that's not even there. This is like 60. See how far I can see with this.
Waypoint marked.
Let's see. Looks like that's about 90.
Make for target location.
I think that's reading about, there's 123. So when you are from about here to here across a football field with virtually any real life gun, when you go to shoot, it might as well be hit scan. It's only when you start to get beyond these ranges, and even that depends on the guns. LMGs like the Bruin that is in Modern Warfare, they have insane long distance, miles of range, and they preserve accuracy. If I remember correctly, that Bruin in real life is considered to have something like 1.2 miles of point accuracy. It's crazy. So when you go to the hit scan was basically, the old Call of Duty was based on this, that you would have this long distance target that was hit immediately. And now there's all sorts of delay, and the submachine guns are so slow. I'm not sure how they compare to the real life statistics, but boy, it'd be hard to imagine the real life ones could possibly have such a low velocity. But anyhow, the point being that when you go in, this fifth section here is about the shooter's advantage. And it's murkier now because people aren't sure how the developers are handling the projectile end of it against the movements. But when you see someone on your screen, you still get the initial hit. And that is the question is, how bad is it? So here's the point. Not going to try not to go on forever with this. They have the movement speed. This is one of the quickest guns. It should be quicker carrying a knife or just running by fists. But even with this like basic quick gun, they have the movement speed officially listed as about just under 5 meters per second. They have written it down as miles per hour, which is just totally not useful at all in this environment. Your movement speed, your sprinting speed and walking speed and all that, you need to look at them at meters per second in this game. So a meter is a little bit over 3 feet. It's just about the same thing as a yard. And wherever they're getting this, it may just be the start and stop times on it being very frame accurate. Wherever they're getting the 5 meters, for me, effectively on this game, it seems to be basically exactly the same as Modern Warfare. When you have a let's see, get a good marking spot here. Okay, here at the edge of this board, and mark 7.
Coordinates marked.
Oh, I should have said it on hardpoint. Basically, though, for a person that's not using some kind of high-speed capture camera to capture the things, or they may be using a full sprint versus start and stop. I can't tell effectively in reality that like when I go to measure this in just rough game time, when you start to run and then hit a spot, it is nearly always about 7 meters per second. And it's, if you say are already running and time it at a key marker to the next marker at 1 second after that, it still is right at about 7 meters per second. Obviously, there's a little bit of delay in starting to get your run up, but wherever they're calculating that, it may just be, like I said, that it's stop frame accurate with the 5 meters per second, because that's really not very far. It's just like a little thing here. But effectively, for any person who doesn't have that equipment, when you go to mark this and run, you get right at 7 meters per second. Now, it's slower with a heavier gun or with a launcher or something, but with a light machine gun, most of the assault rifles, it's still all about the same. And the point, what I'm getting at, and what I'll do in a minute is I'll go into a hardpoint match with a timer and show the timer while it's clicking down while you run. But
marking waypoint.
Where's a good spot to do this? Okay, this will work. Go from right here to
waypoint marked.
7 meters. I'm going to back out from here. Okay. So this distance right here is 1 second of a person running on the screen. A second is 1,000 milliseconds. So that means that this... Get some kind of...
Make for target location. Waypoint marked.
Oh, that's great. It's almost at the corner of the board there. Okay. Double check that. From this corner up to the corner of the board.
Marked. Marking waypoint.
Okay, there you go. All right, so when you're shooting, this distance right here is 1 second of somebody running. That makes this halfway area 500 milliseconds. The reason that matters, and again, try and keep this as concise as possible. When you see a connection to the server listed as 30 milliseconds, which is a good connection, that is normally supposed to mean a round trip. There are certain gaming environments where they're using one-way unidirectional pings. But got into this last game because it was either wrong in Modern Warfare on launch, or it was listed as unidirectional. It was corrected to round trip, whatever it was before. A round trip ping of 30 milliseconds between two players on the internet with this server system means that when you your information would, under those ideal circumstances, take 15 milliseconds to get to the server and another 15 to get to the other player. But they then have to react back in seeing you. And so when they then shoot or move, if you're already seeing them, that information then also has to relay back across that 30 milliseconds. But then you also have server overhead. that server overhead is basically, it's traffic based, as in the volume of people on the server, the quality of the servers, and on their server hertz, which is how much it's processing. And under quite a few tests that Battle Nonsense did, who's the networking guy that's big across the world, there were just direct correlations where when you went from a 10 hertz server to a 20 hertz to a 30 to a 60 up to a 120, you get just immense increase in delay based on the pure server frequency. If there's no congestion on the internet, if the two people have perfect connections to the server, if it's on fiber optic with this minimal 20-30 ping, the overhead goes way up. On 30 hertz servers, I think it turned that into like 120 milliseconds delay, just one direction. So what would have been 30 milliseconds to the other player turned into 120, if I remember correctly. Fortunately, Call of Duty runs on 60 hertz servers, so there's a little bit of delay there. It's possibly 10 milliseconds. What that effectively means is that if the delay between us updating is maybe 40 milliseconds, that would be 1,000. This would be 500. This would be 250. This is 125. This is about 60. Realistically speaking, under the most ideal possible conditions on a 60 hertz server, their position would change from here to here. The problem with that, under those ideal conditions, is that when the people are basing what they see on shooting, that means that they are then going to fire back, which is going to have the delay coming back the other way. So that what that does is it makes it where I'm at this position, I've already moved to here. I'm at this position, I moved to here. They are still seeing me there. They begin firing, but I've already moved over here. Depending on when it was caught and how it was fired, I am going to effectively be being hit at twice that desync because of the delay back on the damage and the firing on the guns. So basically that means, again, getting back to this, if you're going from at an ideal situation a 40 millisecond delay to them, and that's turning into an 80 or 90 millisecond delay round trip back from them, 1,000, about 500, about 250, about 125. When you have then higher volume or a ping that is at 60 seconds, maybe higher volume moves it up to here. A ping that goes up to 60 is going to move it as far as possibly here. I was put into Modern Warfare lobbies constantly that were listed at 90 milliseconds. I don't have the direct connection to the other people, but the delays were this bad. And what that boils down to is this. Given that this could potentially be a desync window, again, I've got to break it down again. 1,000, 500, 500-ish, 250, 125, 60-ish. Turning it up to about 110. There's that. The reason it matters is that when you are here coming around to cover, which is going to happen all the time in these games, that is within that window. It is within that round trip window. So if I'm here and I move to this position and a person is already standing, if my enemy has been on this stair step, there are two different ways to see this. This is like Einstein's relativity. It's total frame of reference and two conflicting frames of reference. That even on a fiber optic ideal internet connection still has an effect. When you are standing here and you move within that very minimal window to here, if they have been on this step and they're, say, still sitting there, they don't know you're there. You move around and you're moving at this lightning speed and see them. You aren't actually there on their system yet. When they come around, if they're fast and begin shooting, what is it going to be like on the receiving end? Well, it's basically called interpolation. The game masks it. You are immediately just blasted. And they have different ways. I've gone through on frame by frame, and typically what happens is I've seen it go from what should have been 30 frames down to about 23 frames. It spliced out 7 out of 30 frames. Now, if you move around this, they have been sitting there and see you. You're kind of in a hurry and you don't begin shooting, and you get to here. They now see you in your past position right here and are shooting you. And you're being hit regardless of what you do. You could be sliding, whatever. You're getting hit back at this past position. Now, this has been tested over and over and over. It is a real thing that you can do. You can set up high-speed cameras. You can get dedicated server connections. You can look at exact ping values via something like Wireshark or a router function, and you can confirm that you are over here getting hits because you are still at this position on their screen. If you moved around this at the exact moment that they got a funny feeling and moved off the steps, you're still seeing them on the steps, and instead you're shooting them at a place they already left because you haven't updated to them. You haven't updated to them, they haven't updated to you. And that's where the developers have all these things they keep changing over the years about how are we going to split the difference between the people. If one person is on the short end and has a 15 millisecond ping, what is it going to do to the person on the how is that going to compare with the person on the other end who has a 100 millisecond ping? Because both of you are getting delayed information. It's just that one person is getting it from the server side of it faster than the other person. One person's on the long end of the server, the other person's on the short end of the server. And so they've changed it, they've estimated it, they've done like splits and, whatever. But it's hard to do. It's just that it gets very frustrating. And when people don't know that it's happening, it's doubly frustrating. If you both see each other, or furthermore, say this, the person up there was in the plane the same way I was here. I move here at the same time they're coming out of the door. I am still going to, they aren't going to be on my screen yet, and I'm not going to be on theirs. We're then going to get into this weird seesaw of past positions while we go into a gun battle. So, they do their best with it. And what I was saying in the other, it's a terribly big deal. This game has, they have apparently changed something in the way that balancing is working. And over that, they have changed the time to kill of the guns, the fire rates, and the damage levels over Modern Warfare. So, getting back to over here again. Here was that window.
Coordinates marked.
One second window, 1,000 milliseconds. If you take one of these guns, and I'm going to simplify it by removing the velocity travel time, which I'll act like because it's so close and guns, the fire rate in real life is so fast, because normally the Call of Duty has run on hit scan, I'm not even going to consider the travel time of the bullet. At longer distances, that would really matter for the first shot. Basically, at longer distances, the longer the bullet takes to get there, as long as you're continuously firing, there's only one appendage of time to it, which is the initial velocity travel time at a longer distance. And it does make a big difference when you're talking about how quickly these things work. But at this short of range, it really shouldn't matter. So you're here, or somebody is moving across this window. They're sprinting. If this is the absolute minimal time of about 30 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds player to player, going up to about 60 or 80 milliseconds player to player. As soon as you get into that, I'm talking about a direct high-frequency server, fiber optic internet, between both people, with perfect server performance and no overhead, next to no overhead. When you are at this window right here between the people in a round-trip update cycle that's at about 80 milliseconds combined value between the two people. Modern Warfare had guns that kill in that time window via headshots, the one-shots, or a couple of the weird freak guns. Virtually every gun in that game killed within 250 milliseconds, which is about here. So if you look at that time there, that means that in any gunfight, you were at an immense disadvantage as the receiver because of shooter's advantage. And this is something that many people innately see in these games. It was so horrible in Battlefield 5. They went through all these seesaws over the past couple years in Battlefield 5 of, do we raise the time to kill? How are we going to change? What are we doing with the servers? All this stuff. And you can go back and see the history of it, because it was tested that I think in over a third of the gunfights, your receiving time to die was an artificial reduction of over 25% up to like 75%. You were being in over a third of your gunfights, you were being killed at 25 to 75% reduction of a normal death time. It's absolutely terrible. Battlefield 1 was not that bad at all. I don't know what they did wrong with Battlefield 5. And these games have always done that. When you're on the receiving end of the delay in a shooter's advantage environment with a gun that kills that quickly, it is like just getting blasted by a shotgun. And I have actual videos that show an MP5 hitting me from about that far away, where the enemy had the packet delay markers on their side. It all hit me at once like a blast from a shotgun. So, whatever. That kind of stuff goes on all the time in these games. I have to get back on point here because it's just I'm getting up to close to an hour. So, 500 milliseconds, 250 milliseconds, 125. Standard delay window right in here. Multiple guns killing you in that delay window. virtually all of the guns killing you by right here. In a 90 millisecond lobby, which was constant in Modern Warfare for some reason, you're already up to this delay window. What they've done in Cold War, which is just like Black Ops 4 roughly, I'm not sure the exact time to kill values, is that it's nearly double that. And what that does is it has the effect that you are being hit by an occasional stray bullet. When the time to kill is up in this range right here, and also for me, my standard ping to these Cold War servers is 20 versus 30 to 40 on Modern Warfare. And that's already a third to a half the time. It's cutting it down that much. If the other people have that too, that cuts the entire thing potentially down by like a third to a half. I don't think it's actually going to hit a half, but a third. And the window that it takes the gun to fire and terminate someone is up here at 500 milliseconds. Or closer to 500 milliseconds. A lot of them are like 350 to 400-ish. So that gives you a blanket. It gives you a window where this lag compensation shooter's advantage stuff isn't as important. You aren't getting instant killed right in this little dumb window here. When you go to run out of the this door, they are instantly like, you aren't getting instantly melted. Now, again, there are going to be people who say, oh, well, that does happen. You run right out here. And yes, I've had circumstances like that too. I've had circumstances where I came right around and they just immediately saw me, fired, and I was dead. And that was the time to kill on the guns. But that is not a sprinting situation where you're moving at high speed across that region. That's under ideal network conditions where it's just down at that very minimal 60-second relay window. And it's not really a norm. I mean, I can't say that I have direct statistics to back that up, but I know that after many years of playing the games, I have seen much more when under extreme situation. I played out to California, and I have a video where I was about here, a sniper was up in the window. I ran from here to here, and by the time I was here, bang, here comes a hit marker. And on their kill cam, which there's an issue with the kill cams of them being delayed against the actual stuff that's happening. When in the kill cam, they shot me about here, yet it still really shows me already behind the door being hit by the sniping rifle. But on a connection to California at maybe 180 ping, that was what happened. Here I am, I'm already over here, and it's dead. Now, again, that's extreme, but in a standard Call of Duty match, all the time you have people in this window. I mean, I've played 100 matches in a brief time window where I've been at something, ducked under a box, and had the bullets still hit me. The other issue with that is that, again, back to this window. 1,000 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds. Your display determines how many positions are actually showing to you across this window when an enemy moves across it. If you are at 60 frames per second, you're going to have 60 flipbook-like positions of the enemy character. If you're at 30, it's going to be really awful. You're only going to have 15 to here, 7.5 to here, like 7 to here. That means between these two positions, there are only 7 cartoon flipbook-like postures. And the thing with these games is very murky, is that they aren't the same postures. When you go through and look at these things in slow motion, it's not just this game. They use a special, again, it's basically interpolation. they use a special system that changes the graphical representation as they're running across this window depending on the available frame rate. And so what that means is that if you're on a 120 FPS system, whereas this was 7 frames, on a 120 you're getting 60, 30, 15 frames right in here. So how, if you're like shooting, if the hit markers are supposed to be on the person's body in order to hit them, this is a big deal, and this is what people basically don't talk about. And you're going to see it in virtually every single match. Is that you have all this stuff about fire rate, bullet velocity, ping, everything. The bottom line on a lot of that is that it's going to be when they're running across here. First off, if your display has a person standing there running right here, but a 120 hertz person has 2 people at somewhat adjunct positions instead of that, when you go to shoot, what determines where the hitbox was? How is the aim assist going to work when it's trying to slow down? This is why you see all this weird stuff with the aim assist and the different systems, and it seeming like hits are hitting when they aren't exactly on target and all this other stuff. But they try their best because it's very difficult to do. Again, until somebody is on a direct fiber optic LAN tournament environment. But as much that, your display, it can be handled differently. Again, it's all this interpolation stuff. But interpolation, if you don't know what it means if you have 2 poles, you can predict where the third pole is. If you have 2 frames of motion, you can predict and estimate where the central third frame was. Any state, when you have 2 different points, you can predict where the intermediary point was. It may not be right, though. But in this type of environment, it is right. It's just a balancing system. So, depending on that, the display may be able to do stuff regardless of technically what the game's sending it. But what you want is you want the game to be you want the servers to be sending at a rate that matches what your system's capable of and matches what the display is capable of, so that you have an accurate representation. And the point of that is that when you get these delays and you get lower frame rates and you have display issues, you're getting a sloppy mess of positions that are not the same positions to be aiming at as someone who is on a super low ping connection, high frequency server, high frequency display, where they are getting an accurate flip book of positions. Ultimately, that is artificial, because what the person was doing on their end was they were just running from here to here. But what you are seeing is not the full flip book, and it is not the same positions. Due to this masking system that is in place in these games. Now, you have to look at each individual game and test at different frame rates to see what it's doing. But that means that when you're shooting, what's it going to do? It is my impression, because it's very high speed, that it is allowing intermittent hits that are not exactly on point because they are within the window of motion rather than what the final display was. And that's why you'll see hits that appear to be hitting on point. But for the receiver, that's not going to be the same thing as what they were experiencing because of shooter's advantage and delay. So, but again, this does not need to be a master's thesis. This is something that is encountered every single time you play a first-person shooter over the internet in close quarters combat. And if you haven't seen it, you had to have blinders on. That is basically going to lead to the next major part, which is about spawns and game modes. I'm not going to do that in this because it's already up over an hour. But in a recap here, you go to play it. Who are you playing with? Is it serious? Is it just a kid's game? It's not supposed to be a kid's game. It has a rating right there. Is it serious? At the high end of it, yes, it's serious. $1 million tournaments, billions of dollars per year in industry. Top tier professional players, PC people, very high level game development, elite game development, U.S. military involvement, sponsorship, and tournaments. I will go ahead and say this. These environments can be used as generalized military training environments. There is a basis to these things. These are situational awareness. These are combat readiness type things put into this game by developers who know some of those people. And so at the same exact time, they've done all kinds of stupid stuff. And basically, again, getting back to the point, this is about a reaction to a top 10 tips for beginners. And basically feeling like it really did it really wasn't very helpful. Now again, this video is not really going to be applicable to people who are kids or people picking up a game who just want to hop in and play like a big crash test dummy. But back from the start, who are you playing against? There's all kinds of trash talk and stuff. Are you taking it seriously? All of these things are factors. If you're having problems in the game and are not doing well, there's this vast discrepancy in what you're going to get based on all of this. And, you know, learning to be accurate with the settings and the controls and things. There was another part to the last video that I guess I'll save and I'll add to the spawn one, which has to do with the limited range on the SMGs this year, and looking at what the actual real effective range of them is. But I'm not going to do that right now. I hope somebody gets something beneficial out of this. Check on out and take a break.